does Stacie Anderson do?
Before we get too far started, are you editing this, or do we need to do this without any, start and stops?
I can edit out, if there's something you want me to edit out, or there's just, a long, awkward pause, I might edit that out.
Okay.
I'm probably going to be editing out, the first minute where you're kind of just adjusting the thing, but...
Yeah. Well, I didn't know if you wanted to stop and delete, and we can start from the beginning, knowing that, I should just try to not have any edits as much as possible. I just didn't know.
A couple of miscellaneous edits. I kind of would prefer just to be able to do one take of continuous, but...
Okay, perfect.
If I have to snip off the beginning and I will.
Okay. And when you asked me to introduce myself, do you want me to actually talk about beyond my name,
A little bit beyond your name, I guess.
Okay.
All right. Please introduce yourself, Stacie.
Hi, I'm Stacie Anderson, born and raised in the Sioux City, Iowa. Current business owner. Actually have a couple businesses. I own Empowering Conversations, which produces Suland Magazine, a community magazine that helps to bridge understanding and just get people together and have really good conversations. And then also I have the Expansion Center with my partner Debbie LaCroix. And that business is fairly new. We've just been open under a year, and the idea is that it's a place for people like Debbie and myself who love to learn and just want a place to come together in community and learn things and try things and play. So really, really fun new space.
Being frank, I should probably get Debbie's side of the story, because I'm sure you'll give yours.
Yeah.
Both will be interesting to hear side by side. Anyway, I guess let's hear the story of Stacie, how you went from wherever you began to here and now.
Oh my gosh. I have had a lot of detours, a lot of dead-end roads, a lot of wiggling, which, hindsight, when you look back, it's so revealing, and it's so beautiful to see that things that might have seemed like obstacles or hiccups really were blessings. They were really beautiful things. They allowed for growth and better understanding of myself, and sometimes they take you places that are a little bit unexpected, that I just wasn't planning for. But when I look at it now, I'm like, well, that makes perfect sense why this and that happened, because it took me to where I'm at. And so it's been interesting. I started, I don't know how far back we want to go, but
well, how far back do you want to go?
Yeah, it's interesting. So, I was going to just start kind of talking about the business world, and depending on who your audience is and what they're interested in, but I don't often even talk about business where somehow it doesn't still gravitate back to my childhood, because I think it's a really important part of my life and defining, and I think it is for a lot of people, right? We don't realize how profound our childhood is, and the things that we've learned and the things that were programmed into us during those first 7 years and how they show up. But I lost my mom when I was 9 years old. She was out for a walk a couple weeks before Christmas, and the sidewalk wasn't shoveled, and she had to veer out into the street just slightly, and she was out with the neighbor and on this walk, and a car didn't see them and hit them, and so never saw my mother again after that. And it's things like that that do, they really define you as a person. And I think for any human being, you have a choice, right? Like in that circumstance, I could either be a victim of something or I could be a survivor of. And for me, and again, this isn't something that happened that moment. This has been a ongoing process. But there was, I'm sure, at some point that moment where you just realize, I'm going to be a survivor. Like, I'm going to look for the good in things and the blessing in things. And, I could certainly go down a really negative road. And I actually did later. I did this later, college years. My partner Debbie could talk to you about that. She was instrumental in helping me through a really hard time when I grieved as an adult in my early 20s. But the beauty is in how we look at things. And I've got to the point, in having done a lot of work, because it does take work to go through grief and not get stuck. But now I see the beauty in things. I feel like my relationships are much stronger because of that. Like having a teenage daughter, as an example. I have a teenage daughter, and I don't think that there is a parent teenage relationship out there that hasn't had friction. Like that's just the nature of the way that goes, right? But I feel like when her and I have these moments where we're maybe struggling or we don't see eye to eye, I feel like I have these out of body experiences where I'm standing outside myself watching her and I argue or just have some frustration, and I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like I get to be here for this, the good, the bad, the ugly, because I didn't have that with my mom. I didn't have, as a teenager, this mother that I could have these arguments and these growth journeys with. And so to just be able to go, you know what, even in the messy space that we experience as humans, I even find so much beauty in it, because I'm just really, I think, in this space of gratitude, of just being appreciative for what we do get every minute. And so that, I think, plays out a lot in my life and even into my business. It doesn't blur. I would like to think that people who know me, personally, as a friend, family member, see me as the exact same person as in the business world, right? Like I try to show up being very present, really seeing the people in front of me and appreciating them and taking what they need into the equation, and making sure that all of us are seen and heard and understood and loved. And so for me, with business, relationships are like the foundation of anything.
All right. So you say that summarizes about how you got from.
Well, it summarizes my childhood
like
and how I got here.
More like your philosophy.
But
honestly.
I've had my philosophy, yeah, absolutely, Alex. And so as far as like my work journey, if you will, it's been a little different. I went to college twice. I actually started at Iowa State, got through 3 years, and as I had just mentioned earlier, I went through a really deep depression in my third year of college, when I realized as an adult that I didn't know who my mother was. I didn't have many childhood memories, because of the trauma. I think it just all got blocked out, and was dating somebody, and they wanted to meet my family and get to know them, and somehow it struck a chord, and everything spiraled from there, just realizing the loss I had, the unprocessed work, and then also just like as an adult, grief is different, because as a child I was missing that caregiver, that person who nurtured and took care of me. But as an adult, it was like, who was she as a person? Am I like her? The identity part of it. And so my understanding, having gone through the hospice program, they have a grief and growth program, I learned that this is pretty common for people who had childhood trauma to grieve again as an adult, because it's a different process. So ended up dropping out of Iowa State, because I was in so much grief that I literally couldn't leave my living room floor. I had pulled the bedroom mattress out in my apartment, and just wasn't going to classes. So obviously the college said, you're not welcome back for your last year, and got fired from my job because of my negative disposition. Was out of money. My lease on my apartment was up. Literally everything was looking pretty bleak. And that's actually when Debbie, my business partner, and she was going to Drake at the time, went for a walk in the Merle Hay Mall out in Des Moines, the Des Moines area, which of course where Drake is. And she was trying to wake me up to my reality of, you've got to figure out what you're doing. Like, you're going to be on the streets here in 5 minutes. Like, you have no plan, no options. And in my really negative disposition and dark space, and with a lot of action, I'm like, what do you want me to do? Walk into one of these places and get a job? And I literally stormed off like a 5-year-old at the age of like 20, and walked into a Victoria's Secret store, which happened to be the store at that point in the mall where we were in front of at that particular moment, and asked for a job. And what was really funny is I walked out and looked at Debbie and said, well, I hope you're happy. They hired me. I don't even live in Des Moines. So that was like, Debbie's like, all right, so job check. Where are you gonna live? That's the next thing we got to figure out. And what ended up happening is, again, we were towards the end of that school year, and she had a friend with an apartment who was going home for the summer, and that friend said, hey, you know what? Let your friend, being me, stay in my place for the next 3 months. That way, it's not sitting empty. Gives her a little bit of time to figure it out. And so that's how that started. And by the time school started up again and she came back and Debbie came back, I had found an apartment in the newspaper with a few other women and shared that space. And the transition quickly went from Victoria's Secret to Helzberg Diamonds. It was just a few stores down. They recruited me and they're like, you can make more money doing this. And so I went to that and worked there for a while, and then just realized, okay, I'm going in the hole here. Like, I wasn't making a lot of money, obviously, being a college dropout. Was still kind of in a really dark space, so expenses were being put on credit cards, and still just really unhappy, really, spent a lot of time crying. And that's when I decided I needed to just come back home, which, again, here's Sioux City. And once I got back here, the Helzbergs just transferred me, so I continued to work full-time at the Helzbergs here. And then, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, went through the Grief and Growth program. Someone had recognized the mess I was in and just said, you need help. And thank goodness they did, and that's when I did this program that went on for several weeks. Got the opportunity to meet with all women who had all lost their mothers. And there's something really, really powerful about being in community, being around people who completely understand what you're going through, even though everybody's is a little bit different story, obviously, but at a broader level, like they understood. And after several weeks of going through that and really doing the work and looking at things in my life, I was able to work through that process and went back to school. So then started going to school at Morningside, so here in Sioux City, Morningside, now university, and completely different degree, different direction. And thought I was going to be in the world of business and marketing and Spanish, and my intention was this was temporary. I was just trying to get my life pulled back together, and then I was going to move down south where it's warm, work for a big marketing company, and met my husband. So before I got my feet out of here, I ended up getting, at the time I would have called it stuck. Now I think it was a huge blessing. Love this community. But at that moment I was like, okay, I'm staying in Sioux City. And then I started looking for a job in the marketing area, and they just weren't paying very much, quite a bit less than what I was making at the jewelry store. And I thought, boy, I just went to college twice and have school bills to pay, and now I'm going to make less money. This doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And so I thought, well, maybe I need to ask better questions. Maybe I need to find out from these companies that are in the Siouxland area, if I go to work for them in this area and start at the bottom and do everything you can do and do it right, what could I work up to? Like, what are the people right now in those top positions making? And again, it was less than what I was making in the jewelry industry. I'm like, okay, all right, so plan B. And that's when I said, okay, for now, I'm going to stick with jewelry. And thought it was going to be a temporary thing. Almost 14 years later, was still in it. But I very quickly made the shift. I thought, if I'm going to do jewelry, I want to do it in a space that just was a little bit more elevated. So for me, that was Gunderson Jewelers. I reached out to them about them hiring me. And they said, well, we're not hiring right now. And I was like, yeah, but I want to work here. Let's just say within a couple weeks, I got a call that they made room for me and was hired, and was really excited. So started working there. Was in the sales department, and I think within about a year's time, they added another hat where I got to be the buyer, which was a lot of fun. Did that for very long time. Ended up adding a third hat at some point where I got to do some marketing as well, and went through my graduate gemologist program because I love to learn. Again, back to how we kind of started this whole thing, have this love of learning, and just kind of got to that point where it's like I felt like I had accomplished all the things I could accomplish there, and was doing some soul searching, and just realized that there was more I wanted to do, and again, the jewelry thing was never my initial intention. So it was time to just kind of part ways and go explore and try new things. And that took me pretty quickly over to my position as a second development person at the Sioux City Arts Center. I got brought on to do the capital campaign to bring the Learning Center here, and had a lot of fun in that position, a lot of similar interactions with similar people that I interacted with at the jewelry store, which was really neat to not lose those relationships. And we raised the money and got the Learning Center built, which is so beautiful. I'm so excited that we have that here. But of course, once that was completed, not much of a need for me in that space anymore. So then it came next phase of my life. And with that one, I took a little more of a pause. It was a good few months before I stepped into the next thing, and it ended up being two next things back to back. I started to work part-time for Multicare Health Clinic, and did a lot of their educational seminars. Again, loving to learn, loving to share knowledge, and be part of community and talk with people, and also love natural health in general. So I got brought on to talk to people about regenerative medicine and just alternative ways that they can heal their body from joint pain. So I did that, and within just a couple weeks of starting that, I also made the decision to buy Siouxland Magazine. And when I found out that was for sale, my heart literally jumped out of my chest, and I was just like, that is something I want to do. And it was so surprising, because I almost didn't hear myself say, I want this thing, because it was so quick, from hearing it was for sale to saying I wanted to be an owner of this. There wasn't a lot of time to think about it, to discuss it. It was just, yes. It was this quick yes. And I think it's because I had spent this time prior really doing some self-exploration, and what is it that matters to me, and what do I care about. And that was communication. And like, whether you're in the nonprofit world, the business world, with your family members, like the quality of your conversation makes a difference in the quality of your relationships and ultimately your life. And I thought, a magazine is a way for me to reach more people and to interact with my community, right? And do my part to make my backyard, my community better, if I can help to facilitate meaningful conversations. And so bought that, and it's changed it up quite a bit. I bought it in namesake, but we went from a quarterly publication to bi-monthly, and just kind of shifted the focus of it again to just really be about facilitating really good, meaningful community conversations. And it's ever evolving. That doesn't seem to change, and I think that just comes with me changing, right? Like, if you're a person that decides that you're going to be a lifelong learner, in that you're going to grow, you're going to evolve, you're going to be a different person each and every day. And so that changes then the environment around you and what you're bringing to the world. So you've been doing that for, I'm on my 4th year of that now. And then I said about 9 months ago, Debbie and I discussed opening, or we did open. We'd been discussing for a long time before that, but we discussed and pulled the trigger on actually opening the expansion center. And it was interesting how even that moved fairly quickly, and it was like a merging of two dreams that were similar enough that they really made sense, and they complement, and they weaved in and out. Originally I was looking for a place to have a physical location for the magazine, because I really like the thought of say, even though I own it, I prefer to say I produce it, the community owns it, which means I need to make myself accessible to the community to talk about the stories and the things that matter in the magazine. And also, I'm yoga certified, Reiki certified, I love doing breath work, like there's so many things that I wanted to have a space for. And Debbie as well. She's always wanted a bookstore, and again, I love to read. She loves to read, and she wanted a place to do her business. And we thought, I think we could combine these efforts and create this beautiful space that really goes into the expansion in all areas of our life, the mind, the body, and the spirit. So, where I really love the lane of like the mind. Like I love to learn how does the mind work, and how do we learn, and how can we learn faster. And I'm also a certified John Maxwell speaker, trainer, and coach. So anything around leadership and being a distinguished Toastmaster, anything in communication, like I love all of that. Within the body, again, yoga, Reiki, breath work, movement. I've had this grandmother in my life that's just had her 91st birthday. She's been a huge influence in my life as far as like always going, have you drank enough water? Are you taking your vitamins and supplements? Like I learned like you move, you breathe, you eat well, you take your vitamins. Like the quality of your life depends on how well you treat this body that you live in. And so love this body stuff, and my partner Debbie does a lot with body and chakra healing and balancing, and then she goes into the spiritual realm. And so I thought, boy, I think we both agreed that like this is really cool how what the two of us can bring together really hits all of these areas that humans can grow and explore. And so that was the birth of the Expansion Center, going, let's create this space where we can do workshops, and it's an experiential space. And then on top of that, there's retail products in the bookstore and things that support people's growth. And so it's been a really crazy fun ride already. Again, like I said, we jumped in so fast, but I think that there is something to that. This willingness to trust your guts, your instinct, to step up and do something that you feel really passionately about bringing forward for the other, for others. I think the universe meets you when you do that. When you say, "I'm going to, to take that leap of faith. I'm going to make that jump and going to go in, full in." It seems like you see all these things that happen. You're like, I can't believe this that these people are coming in, or that these coincidences, so to speak. But I think that they aren't necessarily coincidences. It's just how the universe plays with us when we are focused in on purpose, and we have that positive energy, and all things just kind of come into alignment.
Yeah. Well then, it's a summary from, I guess, a reasonable beginning to, I was going to say end, but I'd hardly say you're at the end of anything.
No.
So from beginning to about now, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right. A second question I was going to ask you was, after you'd introduced yourself and told me, your story, was what you. I wonder if that can be heard on the microphone. Yeah, someone's kind of loud. I'm not seeing too many spikes on the. Alright, well, they're not really spiking on the audio jig, but there's a specific word for this thing, with all the audio spikes that shows you how volume you're being, but I don't remember what it's called off the top of my head. Now what was I saying before someone was being loud outside?
From beginning to end, but hopefully not the end.
From beginning to now. Yeah. Right, I was going to ask you, I guess, your thought processes, your philosophy, but I think you kind of already explained that, unless you think you can go into more depth.
My thought processes.
Your modus operandi.
Yeah, find that I fluctuate between spaces. I'm trying to figure out how to best describe this, but like I can be wildly creative and innovative, and I'm also very practical. I love taking action really fast and getting momentum and moving forward with things, but I also like to be cautious and thoughtful and think through things. It's really interesting because I feel like I'm always trying to balance the line of these things, but where I'm at right now in my life is kind of testing those things. So if I'm really gravitating one direction, or I'm really used to something, I'm testing myself a little bit on that, as if is that really the way I should do it, or the best way to do it? Like, what would happen if I didn't assume that the way I've always done it is right, and I try something new? I've gotten in this space. I think in the like the yoga world, we talk about like the observer, right? Like, I love this concept of being able to step outside of yourself, take time to be still, be quiet, reflect, and be thoughtful about things, and think about, like, why do I do things the way I do things, especially if it's something I've done for a long time, and kind of testing it and going, what if I shifted? What if I did something a little different? What would that look like? What would I experience? Could I learn something more? So right now, that's kind of where I'm at, is trying not to take myself so seriously, because I can be very serious, and be a little more playful, a little bit more experimental, and just trying things with the thought that I'm just here to love on people and to learn things and evolve as a being. And it's about that. And we hear this a lot. They always say it's about the journey. It's about the journey. But even though we hear it a lot, we still, I think, spend too much time focusing on the destination. And changing maybe the verbiage up a little bit from focusing on the journey to focusing in on who I'm becoming, right? How I'm evolving, how I'm changing through all of these uncomfortable moments, I like to call them, because I use that language a lot about, like, you're not growing unless you're uncomfortable, right? You gotta challenge yourself, push yourself, get a little uncomfortable. That's where the growth happens. And so just trying to stay in that space where there's just a little bit every day of overcoming the self, overcoming fear, overcoming this complacency and wanting to get comfortable, and trying to just push that line of trying new things, exploring new ways, getting different perspectives from others by engaging in those conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, decently summarizes your thought processes, what generally you try to live by in terms of goals and modus operandi, yes.
Yeah. I heard, this is their thing that I'll be honest, I struggle with is, I hate the word perfectionist, but I do have high standards and on myself more than anybody. And they say, if you can do something, or if somebody else can do something 80% as well as you can, you should delegate it, right? Allow yourself the space to be able to, and the time to do the things that you do well, and allow others to take some of that off the plate. It also really gives those people, the people that you delegate to, the opportunity to step into something and to grow and to feel the accomplishment of those things. And so that's another thing right now too, is I'm working on, again, just allowing myself to not worry about getting it perfect or getting it all done, right? Because I think at the end, hopefully, like, when we die, like, no one's going to have it all done, right? We're never going to get it all done. It's never going to be perfect. So why are we even trying? You got to kind of wonder, like, why are we trying so hard to do it all and do it all perfectly when it's just not even possible? I mean, if you completed everything, then your life would be done, right? Like you always need something to reach towards to keep you alive and moving. So just knowing that, can't get it all done, can't get it perfect, I think allows us or gives us permission to just go, okay, I'm going to do the best I can today, and tomorrow's another day.
Yeah, I've heard this line that might be useful. Never let perfect be the enemy of good.
That's a great line.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can get 99%, and if you're spending a half of eternity getting that last 1%, well, think of all the other 99% you could have gotten.
Exactly. Yeah, that's great, Alex.
Yeah. So, I'd say it's a pretty good idea of who you are. So, I guess still some more time before this would become excessively long. So do you have any interesting stories that you want to tell?
Oh my gosh, do I have interesting stories
That
that I want to tell? Just like maybe the other part of me to share is just I love travel. Like I love people. I love other cultures and languages and customs. Traveling, I'm just really drawn to that. And so, I think a lot of my fun stories have to do around just places I've been and experiences I've had. One of the ones that pops out first, just because it was like, it involves so many emotions, was when I was in Guatemala. It was one of the first places out of the country I had been to. I was there for a few weeks and then had gone on a weekend trip right deep into the jungle. And there was just a little space plowed out where they had a few huts and a central hut in the middle, and they had 2 of us per room. And they were showing us, the space. They're like, okay, so the 2 of you will share this room. Everything, as you can see, is like the bedding is all tucked in really, really tight. Keep it that way other than to get your body into it, right? Because we do have very, very large spiders here. Make sure doors are always shut, like all these rules. And at like 5 o'clock, the electricity shuts down, so there'll be 0 electricity for you after that point. Keep in mind, it's going to be like over 100 degrees and super humid like the entire time. So really hard to sleep with no fan, no air conditioning, no electricity. Not to mention when you're in the jungle and there's no electricity, like when it's dark, it is like dark, other than we have our little flashlights. But the country itself was like so beautiful. The people were very welcoming. They were wonderful. There's just so much I loved about it, and the music and the food. But that particular night, the night that we spent in the jungle, me and this other person tried to get into the sheets and keep it as tucked as possible. So you're basically, putting yourself in this tight little burrito, and it's 100 degrees and you're so hot you think, I'm going to literally die from like the heat, like I'm having a heat stroke. And then we're spraying like off bug spray all over and around the bed, because all I could think about is there's going to be tarantulas trying to get in and I can't see them, so I have to be tucked tight, but I'm hot. And just as I'm thinking, okay, this can't get any worse, there we are, neither one of us can sleep, we're so hot, we're tucked in tight, we're worried about tarantulas, and we start hearing this really, really loud noise of I don't know, the gorillas, monkeys, whatever, outside the door, and we think that they're trying to break in, and we're like, oh my gosh, we're going to die tonight. Like, they're bigger, they're stronger, like, they're coming for us. Obviously, we were very naive and didn't understand. And so I don't remember really sleeping at all that night, but the next day, we got our stuff together, we went out to meet everybody at the central location for breakfast, and the lady that was hosting us in that space was like, did everybody hear the wonderful mating calls last night? We're like, oh, those were mating calls. We thought they were trying to get in to murder us. That would have been good to know before we called it a night that we might hear that. So it was a night, it was a weekend, an experience of just like pure joy of being in such a beautiful space, these gorgeous, beautiful trees, and being in the jungle and the wildlife, but then also being terrified for your life. And I think anytime you can have an experience that really pulls in all of your senses, that takes you to the highs and the lows and leaves you a little bit different, they're always great experiences.
Oh. So that's one such story.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I have so many different stories. Is there like a category or a specific?
Just, yeah. I kind of like shooting for, at maximum about an hour.
Mm-hmm.
If we go a little bit shorter or a little bit longer, it's not too much. But
Yeah.
I have to assume that, to anyone who happens to be listening to this, I don't know if they're listening to this like in 2 times speed or listening to it in chunks.
Gotcha.
But, you don't want to go too excessively long.
Yeah.
I'll try and give you some prompts or something. About the Suland Magazine. I'm sure you've got some interesting stories from working with that.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Yeah, what I love about the magazine, there's a lot of things, but the fact that we're sharing people's stories. We have a lot of personal stories in there, a lot with nonprofits and small businesses. But I remember that first year we had a lady that we were doing a story on. And, she didn't speak English when she first moved to this country. She'd been through a lot of challenges. And, at this point in sharing her story, she was hugely successful, spoke the language well. Everything had, things had shifted from her, but she was sharing her full story. And the night before it was supposed to go to the printer, she calls us and she says, I think I want you to pull my story. She goes, it's just very raw, very personal, and I just don't know that I'm ready to share it. And we talked through it a little bit, and of course, if she wanted to pull that was going to be what we did, like people first. But after talking through it, she just wanted a couple little changes made, and then she's like, let's just do it. Let's just put this out there. And we did. And her story ran in the magazine, and it wasn't more than maybe a couple weeks later we got a call from her. She was in one of the Hy-Vee stores, and somebody who recognized her, somebody she did not know, but they recognized her from her story in the magazine. They went up to her, and they just immediately embraced her and were like tearful, and they're just like, your story changed me. Like they had such a connection from that story. And she called and she's like, I just really want to thank you for pushing me a little bit to be brave, to share my story, to connect with others, because she got to experience how powerful that is, right? When we have no shame in the life experiences that we've had, when we recognize that all the things that we've had to overcome, that defines us. It helps build our character, and that's those are beautiful parts of us. And that was just really heartwarming to have her experience that, to share her gratitude with us, to be this publication that that allows people to share a story. And again, this is what we want to do, right? We wanted to strengthen our community, and that happens when we just show up really authentic and transparent, and we're here to own all of who we are.
Yeah, that's kind of why I'm doing this. There's these stories, and they're all in our own head. And sure, there's other people who know them who've interacted tangentially, but and remembering what's happened to your mother. Mm-hmm. When you're gone, so are the stories, and unless you happen to have told them. So
yeah, it's good that we tell stories. That's really what everything comes down to. Like, we are storytellers. People, that's how we share information. That's how we connect. It's how we learn, and it's one of the most powerful tools in learning and connecting, is doing it through story.
Our ability to share our memories is the cornerstone of civilization.
Yeah. I love too how it allows us to learn from others, right? If we had to go through life and experience everything firsthand to learn it, that would be one really hard to live through, and it just takes a long time. But through that storytelling and through sharing in community, we can learn from others, and we can learn faster and in an easier way.
We've all made mistakes, and sometimes there are mistakes that you do need to make yourself in order to actually learn from them. And then there's others where, well, it's better that you learn not to do that in the first place.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned, though, that we all make mistakes, because I think we forget that, and we get way too hard on ourselves. And there's something very freeing about just owning that, saying, we're all humans having a human experience, which is a messy experience, and that's okay. And like to be able to again see the beauty in that and the joy in that and the lessons. There's no. I hate the negative spin that the word failure gets. That was something I did an issue on, I think, again, that first year, where I'm like, failure should be something that we put ourselves out there to try. Like, how do I better put this? Like, you can't do anything great unless you've failed. You just really can't. Like, to take those next steps and the next steps. Like, think about when a baby's trying to learn to walk. Like, they're not going to just go, oh, I just need to stand up and take steps. Yeah. they're gonna try to figure out how to get up first and take little steps, and they're gonna fall. Like, there is inevitably failure in trying to learn something, but it's how we look at it. We look at failure as this beautiful process, the momentum to move us towards success. And as long as you're learning, is it really even failure, right? Yeah. It's part of the process, number one, and number two, if we're learning from it. I mean, I can tell you this. I still remember back, even though it was a long time ago, but like being in school and getting your tests, right? Back when we had written tests. I don't know about what they're doing nowadays, but everything was written. You got red ink when you made mistakes.
Yeah.
And I would go back, because I was that one that I wanted to learn. I wanted to know what I did wrong. And so if I missed something, I would read where those little red check marks are, and I'd read the right answer. And it was those mistakes, they're the ones that I ended up remembering. Like later, it'd be like, okay, if you asked me if I retook that test years later, I might not get half of them right, but I would definitely get right the ones that I had missed that day, because my brain went back and reprocessed that, and I just learned it at a deeper level. So I think there's a lot of benefit, to failing and to embracing it, and not again leading with fear and just going, it's okay. I'm expecting to fail because I'm shooting for something really great.
Yeah. I wanted to make a comment about there was an AI training scheme where you reparameterize failure as a success. You learned how to not do something. But then I just now remember, there's a quote from, who says it? I have not failed 1,000 times. I have found 1,000 methods that won't work.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. I think that's Einstein, but...
Is that Einstein?
Or, anyway.
I mean, yeah, we just have to remember, life isn't perfect, and it's not going to be.
Nor should it be.
And we have to be... I mean, we can't be like water, kind of have to be, but can't also be stone.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, it's that fine line where I feel like I spend most of my time balancing that, wanting to work so hard and press forward and strive for excellence, and then the side that says just sit, just be, just exist, breathe, play. You've got to find that balance in life. And I know there's a lot of people right now, I find this so interesting, where people are like, I don't like the word balance. I don't like the word balance. Like, I've heard that so much right now, where even balance is getting a bad word. Oh, balance is impossible. There's, you can't achieve it. We need to stop trying for it. And I'm thinking, well, geez, if I were riding a bicycle, I'm going to keep working on it the entire time I'm pedaling. There's nothing wrong with it being it necessitating constant focus on it, right? If that it is the balancing, that's the whole point. The whole point is to stay aware, to stay in the process. As long as you're staying aware and you're in the process, you'll keep modifying. It's like that plane that with the moment it takes off till it hits its destination, it's always off the most direct path because it's got wind and all the other things that come into play. But the point is it's constantly trying to get back to the path of the shortest path between point A and point B. But same thing with us. We're never going to be exactly in balance, but that doesn't mean we don't participate in that process of trying to stay in there, to stay aware and stay just, pulling all those parts together.
Being frank.
It's fun to ride a bike.
Yeah. I feel like I'm getting a bit out of this too.
Good.
And admittedly, that's kind of the point. I'm hoping that someone, somewhere, hello to that someone or somewhere, I'm waving my hand despite the fact that this is going to be a 2D static image, to that one person somewhere else, some other time. I hope you're getting something out of this.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be one of my hopes is that you're just, what you get out of these things, what I try to get, I consume a lot of podcasts, it's just that little nugget, right? Like, there's always something, if you approach it with, I want to, first off, you have to want to, you have to approach it with, I want to learn something today, I'm open to learning, I'm open to growing, and then you listen, and I think there's always the opportunity to find that little nugget that you can apply in your life. But that's a big part of it too, is, I would hope that you don't just listen to this and go, oh, I got inspired here, or I learned a little something here about myself, but then they don't do anything with it. That's the danger in that. It's hopefully one of those things where you listen, we've got their wheels turning, they have maybe an aha moment, and then they take action. They do something that makes their life just a little bit better from having listened to this.
Yeah. You hear that? Viewer name here. Stacie's talking to you right now. Talking to the future.
Yeah.
Alright. Yeah. Well then, I think I'm kind of short a bit of topics to talk about, unless you have any additional stories that you want to.
I think we covered a lot today. I think it's really good.
Right.
I hope people really enjoyed this episode. And
Well, thank you, Stacie. Let's go ahead and
thanks, Alex.
stop her.